All right. Welcome back to the Rooted Conversations podcast. I am your host, Mitch Webb. Today we have a round two with Miss Trisha Wolfe, the queen of intellect, coming
Yes.
to us live from Spain. How you doing,
Yes.
Trisha?
So good. So happy to be here. So excited to get to continue our conversation.
Absolutely. So I'm curious. It's probably been 5, 6 months since we talked. I feel like it's been years since then, and um, like we do, learning all kinds of new things and sharing that, and continuing love watching your videos and um, wondering what's been going on with you. What's going on in Spain?
Yeah, lots of good things going on in Spain, continuing to learn more and more about body, mind, implicit learnings, how we can create transformational, long-lasting change in our lives. I've been getting very into memory reconsolidation, which is essentially just a fancy way for saying, how can we update and rewire our brains? We know about neuroplasticity, which is forming new neural pathways, but memory reconsolidation is a even stronger form of that lets us sort of turn off old learnings, if that makes sense. So we know we can actually turn off some of these old experiences rather than just having to manage them. And it's such wonderful and exciting news because, I think a lot of times we think about neuroplasticity. We're all kind of familiar with it now, right? We know like neurons that fire together, wire together. But sometimes that gives people the idea that they always have to be trying. We always have to be getting those neurons to wire, 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 fire, fire, fire. We have this sense that it means we have to be actively engaged and always trying to get this change to happen. And memory reconsolidation is even newer research than that lets us know we don't just have to make neurons fire, we actually can change it so that those old neurons that tell us we're not safe, we're okay, we're not okay, it's not safe to be seen, it's not safe to feel feelings, that sensation is dangerous. We know we can actually turn those things down or even off through this process. So I've been playing around with that a lot in my work online with my clients and even in my own life as I continue to explore my relationship to my own well-being, my own bodily sensations of really identifying more and more and observing more and more. What are some of these old learnings that I've experienced, people I work with have experienced, and how do we update and rewire those? And it's been super exciting. I've gotten to feel some big shifts for my clients, but also in my own life too.
Oh yeah. So you're saying we have these kind of alarms that are old learnings that we picked up from childhood
We
or
can we can
other
actually
environments.
acquire Yeah, we can acquire them all through our lives, but because childhood, there's so much rapid development going on, we're getting a lot of learnings really quickly.
And is it kind of like coupling dynamics where I associate a sensation or an environment or a food with a negative or bad sensation in my body, something like that?
That's such a great example. Yeah, coupling dynamics essentially are implicit learning. So think about it like this. Every time you have an experience, your brain brings that into your short-term memory and determines, is this important? Should I hold on to this? And if I should hold on to this because it was something that happens frequently, something that seems important, I've been told it's important, or something that's very intense, then the brain says, I better hold on to this. I'm going to take it from my working memory and I'm going to put it in my long-term memory and I'm going to use it to make predictions about what's going to happen.
Mhm.
Right? So coupling dynamics is basically saying these two things got coupled together. There can be good coupling dynamics, good implicit learnings. What about the moment you walk into a bakery and you're just flooded with like warmth and happiness before you even know what happened? And then you're like, oh my gosh, it smells just like my grandma's house when we used to bake chocolate chip cookies. That's a coupling, right? That's an implicit learning. So implicit learnings are not bad. We don't want to make them bad, but what it means is templates or predictions can get formed in our brain from experiences, and we don't know that they're there because they live in the unconscious side of our brain. And these are stored with context. What does that mean? It means thoughts, emotions, body sensations, and behaviors are all stored with these predictions. So I gave you an example of a positive implicit learning where you might think like, oh, I'm just flooded with such a good feeling, my body's softening, a good emotion. Let's think about another implicit learning you might have. What if every time your parents were kind of storming around and getting in fights with each other and you were scared in your room, they would be breaking glasses. Maybe they were throwing things at each other, right? This is an experience that people have had. Now here you are, you're in your adult life, you're at a networking event, someone drops the glass and the glass shatters, and you start feeling panicky. And
Mhm.
you have no idea why. What's happening? I'm an adult. I'm at a networking event. I'm fine. But your implicit learning says breaking glass, bad things are happening. My caregivers are fighting with each other. I'm unsafe. That gets kicked off, and you don't even know. You don't even know why that's happening. Now, that's a very specific example of an implicit learning, but this can get built around all kinds of things. Symptoms, right? Symptoms and sensations in our bodies. We can get learnings built around that. If every time a little twinge in my stomach happens, then I know I'm going to have all of these symptoms that follows, then the brain learns to watch out for a little twinge. And so even a tiny twinge, which is just a normal experience of digestion, your brain starts setting off the alarms, your body starts bracing, then you feel sick, it reinforces the idea. These are how learnings get even stronger.
I love that, and when I think about the negative side, the implicit learning from the bakery, maybe in the beginning we learn, yeah, this reminds me of mom's cookies, and we like myself, and I know you've been through some of this stuff yourself. We get some digestive issues. We go online, we research, we figure out gluten can cause inflammation, and now when I go into the the cookie place and I'm smelling the cookies, I feel that excitement, and then all of a sudden I'm flooded with fear because gluten is bad and I need to avoid that. And the more I avoid that, the more I wire in that this is bad, and the more I tell my system I want these symptoms.
Exactly. I mean, you're right, right? That like, are there people who genuinely cannot have gluten? Sure, we know that there are celiacs, for example, right? They cannot have gluten. But we know even more so that the way we perceive things, the way we look at things changes our experience of that, right? And I've had this experience myself of chasing symptoms and being told it's the gluten, no, it's the dairy, no, it's the legumes, no, it's the meat, no, and you're constantly trying to chase down what the right thing to eat is. And I will laugh all the time because my husband makes me lunch every day. He's so wonderful. And he'll
Wow.
make me the same lunch. I know, I'm so blessed. He'll make me the same lunch every single day when I'm going through something to, in the past to try to say, like, we'll make sure you don't get sick. And he'll be like, good, 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 very sick. Why? Nothing was different. It was the same food I ate every single day. But in the past, my brain would say, you got very sick. Something on the salad, I ate a chicken salad every day. Something on the salad made you very sick. Now you better have the chicken salad tomorrow with no olives. Was it the olives that caused it? Now you have the chicken salad the next day. You can have the olives back, but you can't have the dressing, right? Because your brain is saying, I'm in danger. Feeling sick, feeling symptoms is dangerous. I'm going to get worse. I'm not going to be able to live the life I want to have. Not going to be able to have energy. So we start playing whack-a-mole, looking for symptoms. That's the learning. The learning says the only way I can be safe is if I'm hyper vigilant to any possible thing that could be making me not feel good. But what we know is that very learning of being so braced, so hypervigilant, so analyzing everything can make it so that we can't digest, right? Because when the body is braced, it's very hard to digest. That's not saying it's a magic trick and you'll be able to digest all food. But what we know is when we can turn down the alarm that, like, this thing is dangerous, and we can just say, oh, that didn't settle right today. Maybe I want to do a little deep breathing after lunch. Maybe I want to go on a walk. Or hey, maybe that's just showbiz and I'm a human and sometimes my stomach doesn't always respond perfectly. Or maybe it's even not dangerous. It's just peristalsis happening, but I learn to be aware of every sensation, right? So we actually want to turn down those learnings so that we can say, oh, nothing dangerous is happening here. And as we update that experience, then we can just be more aware of, like, moving toward what feels good, moving to be more present in our lives. As I mentioned to you when we were chatting, like, I was in Paris for 2 weeks a couple of weeks ago, and I was eating gluten, butter, chocolate croissants, so much coffee because the coffee is amazing, a lot of cheese, all things in the past that I would have been completely terrified that would have sent me into a flare. And by the way, I was walking 30,000 steps a day, so I was full of energy and I had an amazing time and I felt the best that I have, right? So why? How can you make sense out of that except to say there's something different between alarm bells and bracing versus presence and curiosity? It changes even how we can take in nutrients.
Oh yeah, I mean, I appreciate you sharing that, and it sounds delicious, by the way.
It was.
And I'm going through that myself. I have so many clients that are overcoming their fear of food. I think
Mhm.
the wellness industry does a really good job of scaring the shit out of people and saying
Yep.
everything that could be wrong. And then we go into avoidance. I mean, my I was eating meat and salt at one point, and anything outside of that was bad. And it's so refreshing to hear you say, yeah, I mean, maybe it's just my digestion. Um, but if we go into the medical route, we get the crap scared out of us, and then
Mhm.
um, whatever we had in the last 24 hours becomes the problem. I was sharing a story about me with milk before. I was laughing with my therapist, and I'm like, I had a glass of milk last week, and it's like all of a sudden it was not just it was my gut didn't feel good, but my I just got so emotional. Shame came up and a lot of fear, and we were kind of laughing about it. And it's like it's interesting to watch it all, and to learn to go into that observer mode and to almost challenge the old learning. We talked about that before we got on, not a
Yeah.
belief. Um, and eventually it's like it can become a white knuckle exposure if we have this information. Okay, now I'm just going to expose myself to everything and I'm going to white knuckle it through that. But I imagine there's probably a better way to maybe titrate into that experience. So if you had someone that you were working with and they've got this old food fear and they're starting to see the pattern of how their body is responding very sensitively to these different foods and learnings, how would you coach them out of that?
It's a good question, and you can kind of separate techniques into two different camps.
Mm-hmm.
There are counteractive camps, and then there are, let's say, transformational camps.
Yep.
A counteractive camp often will use exposure and behavioral management to try to create change. So, whether it's food, body sensations, or life experiences, the idea is go and do the scary thing. And you can start, in exposure, they start small. Go and do the scary thing and then manage your behaviors, right? So go watch videos of airplanes, for example, if you're afraid of flying. And when you feel anxious, just tell yourself, like, it's okay, I'm safe, do deep breathing, look around, etc. And then eventually you're going to work up to getting on the plane. The idea being that over time, you expose yourself to it, you manage your behaviors, you should essentially make that extinct. Okay, so that counteractive technique is essentially not addressing the root of the learning. So imagine learnings are like roadways in our brain.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Your implicit learnings are like these big, beautiful highways. They're 12 lanes wide. It's the I-95 in New Jersey, right? And they're just like so easy to drive down. You can go 90 miles an hour. It's familiar, all the exits. When you're trying to do counteractive, so exposure plus behavioral management, you're not getting rid of that old road. You're just trying to build a new road. So you're trying to tell your brain, like, I know the I-95 is really easy to drive on, but like, what would you think about driving on this two-lane little highway? It can get us to a better place. And your brain's like, no, that highway looks really dangerous. And you're like, it's not dangerous. It's safe. It's safe. I'm going to do some deep breathing to show you that it's safe. And so eventually you can convince your brain to get off on that highway, on that new road, but your brain is always going to be thinking about the I-95. It's always going to be waiting for that moment it can get back to that safe place because the brain wants to maintain homeostasis, right? It wants to keep brain and body, want to keep things how they have been, their set point. It doesn't matter if the I-95 is beautiful. It's not beautiful. It matters because the brain says this is the safe and trusted pathway. This is what I know from the past, and changing this will be dangerous. All right. So when we're trying to counteract, we're building a new roadway. And think about it like this: the fire alarms are still going off, but you're putting post-it notes all around your house and you're saying, that's not dangerous. There's not really a fire. So don't worry about that. Okay. But in the background,
It's
you're like,
fix it and force and effort is what it sounds like. But it
correct. And you
sounds
just
good
like,
on paper. It sounds like there's a little bit of parts work in there, and there's like a little bit of capacity of being with the uncomfortable sensation. Like there's
sure.
little bit of repair. But if you zoom out, because this is me, what you're describing is what I've been working through with the milk thing and introducing
Mhm.
alcohol again. And it seems like it feels dangerous. I exposed myself a little bit. Hey, that wasn't that bad. But I noticed my fear coming up and wanting to go into perfection
That's
because
right.
ultimately this isn't safe. So if someone's doing this counteractive approach and managing everything, what's the other route?
That's right. So that's really good noticing, right? And I want to make clear there's a time and a place for counteractive approaches, right?
Okay.
Because the transformational work can take a little bit of time. So, yeah, sometimes we need to be like breathing and like slowing ourselves down, like when we need to be in our lives. So I want you to know I'm not criticizing counteractive approaches, but we
Yeah.
have to understand when we want to make a long-lasting transformational change, we want to get to the root. And so when we get to the root, we're much more curious about the learning, what the learning represents, and what's really underneath of there. For example, like this perfectionist part. Think again, an example with me of a veteran who's having responses to fireworks around the 4th of July, right? And would you say to that person, get over it? You're overreacting. No, you would say, oh my gosh, that has to be so terrifying. Your brain is going off as if the past is happening in the present. And so
Mhm.
you could teach that veteran to breathe through it. You could teach them to wear earplugs, all of these things. Or you could get curious about the root of that learning, of what's coming up in that moment, what their brain is predicting is going to happen. And you can slow things down and really work with like how terrifying it must have been for you, that probably you weren't able to feel any fear, wouldn't have been looked on upon as well. You weren't supported in that. Maybe you feel angry about being put in this, I'm making this up, right? Being put in this situation where like you weren't allowed to feel the fear. You just had to push through. Maybe you feel sad about what you witnessed, what you saw, the feelings that you felt that felt like too much. When you work with those rooted things, you can actually update the learning. So when we come back to this example, right, of like, then how do we do this in a transformational way? We're getting more to the root of what the thoughts, emotions, body sensations, and behaviors are that occur in those moments rather than just trying to manage them.
Oh,
Right.
let's
So
do let's do me. Can we do me?
let's do you.
Okay. So I as you're saying this, I had a memory come up. So I was living in a house. I don't even know if this is important, but I'm gonna say it. It was like black mold in it.
Mm.
And I was like at the very beginning of my getting sick situation. Had a head injury and then started getting really bad anxiety, insomnia. When I moved in this house, it was like boom. And I
Mm.
hired this health coach, and he comes to me at our first meeting. He's like, "Meet me down at the general store," and we got some. He brought me a 6 pack of gluten-free beer, and I'm like, "What is this?" Because he had done a test on me and saw that I was like borderline celiac or something like that, or elevated, whatever gluten stuff.
Okay.
And I'm like, "What is this?" Now I'm someone who grew hops, brewed beer, was really into it, and yeah, he brought me a 6 pack of gluten free beer. I'm like, "What's this?" He's like, "Well, this is what you're going to drink from now on because you're celiac." And I'm
Mm.
like, "Ugh, get that out of here! Like, I don't want to do that." And as I even say that, I can feel kind of gross in my body.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Right. So you have this experience of like feeling really sick, not feeling well, not being able to maybe be in your life in the way that you wanted to be in your life. I'm extrapolating, right? But maybe there would have been fear about all of the symptoms that you were having.
Definitely
Maybe you would have
willing to
been
do anything, and it's like I'll cut off this part of me and this
desperate.
thing that I love
That's
to
right.
to change and to go into fix it mode.
That's right. Okay, so there we see part of the learning, right? The part of the learning is like, I'm desperate, I'm scared, I'm sad, I'm afraid. How do I learn to manage these things? Well, if I can just go into knowing everything, analyzing everything, and being hypervigilant all of the time, then maybe I can have some life back. It might not be the life I wanted, and I'll never grieve that because that would make me go into my feelings. Instead, I will just manage everything all of the time. You know that TikTok that's like, I've got the magic in me. It's like people realizing that, it's like when you're sick, it's like if I just analyze everything I eat and everything I do and all my sleep and everything I drink and where's my water from and what's the air quality, then maybe I could be okay.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that learning is deeply implanted in the brain because a part of us feels like our survival is at stake, and maybe it was.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it was.
It did
Right?
feel
But
like
then
it. It's like whatever they brought up. I did a post about this. I said I quit drinking beer because I thought gluten was causing my anxiety. I thought whatever test is going to come up that's off, that's it, and I'm going to fix it.
That's right. I'm going to fix it. And there are endless things to be fixed if you really go looking for it, right? We can try to control for every variable all the time,
Mm-hmm.
and we might get some relief from that, right? We might get some initial relief. You might remember my theory that intellectualization and hypervigilance are forms of functional freeze, right? So we might get a little relief, but it's anesthetization. It's anesthetization, right? We get
Anesthetization.
some
Give me the definition of that word.
numbing. It's numbing,
Oh yeah. So,
right? So
and
like,
I would say yes. Every time I found a new protocol, a new diet, a new thing to admit or omit or avoid, I was like, "This is it," and it would feel good for like a week
yeah.
or two. And I can even see that now. If I catch myself fixing, I'm like, "Oh man!" And I hear my clients say this, "Man, I got this new routine, and it is awesome." Have you ever
Oh, it
heard
feels
of
so good.
mouth taping? I'm like I got a 30% better sleep score because now I'm mouth taping. And really we're feeling safe because we're controlling.
Because we're controlling, right? Because we have this idea of like, I feel out of control. I feel unsafe. I
Yeah.
feel like no one's on my side. I'm all alone in this. Or I feel like I have to get better so that my partner, my children, whoever will like respect me or think well of me or so that I can spend time with them. Like there's all the learning start to mishmash together from our past and in the present.
Yeah.
And so that feeling of like control of like hypervigilance and like, oh, here's a new thing I can try, it helps turn down, right? It helps numb us and say, again, as long as I just keep trying, managing, and doing the tasks all of the time, I will be okay. And we so honor that experience. Like I'm not, I've been there myself. I'm not judging anyone who has this experience. When you are desperate and scared and alone and sad, of course, you would want to reach for anything, right? But we don't get the time and space to feel all of the feelings of like when you're having symptoms that are negatively impacting your life, there's a lot of fear in that. Was anybody ever with you in the fear, or did they just try to give you answers? Did they just try
No.
to tell you how to manage it? Did they that the fear was making your symptoms worse? Because that's what I was told,
Oh yeah.
right?
That and also as a child, big emotions weren't allowed. And so you're just
There's the
in it
double.
and you learn the harder. I mean, I remember coming home from football practice and not and losing my starting position and not talking to my dad on the way home. He's probably asking what's going on. But that being vulnerable probably was not cool. And so I went home and I was so proud of this. But this, like, I thought about this the other day of this, like, striving. And it's coming home, going to the cabinet, grabbing the weight gainer, 5,000 or something. This guy, a ton of calories, and just be like, boom, boom, boom. And my dad was like, yeah, like, work hard. And so society says, work hard, be better, fix yourself, self improvement, and
That's
so it
right.
feels good on the outside, but the damage that it causes later is also something to observe.
So now you're noticing it's not just an inside job, right? We acquire this from the external world too. And you're also naming something really important. It's how our old learnings mash up with present day experiences and create new learnings, right? If we learned as a child, feeling afraid is just going to get you criticized or like get you told like work harder, don't be a crybaby, like put that away. Like if you want something, go after it. Then of course in the present when we have this experience of something that's really scary or really heartbreaking or really hard or really angering, our brain says, I already know how to deal with this. Put it
Well,
away, press on, be
yeah.
successful.
Google research, find the needle in the haystack,
Yes,
apply that, and that feels good at first. And if it doesn't work out, well, now I'm going to go back into shaming myself
of
and
course.
working harder. And so it's just this like, it's loop. So if someone can see the loop, they've done this work, just like we just did, we kind of did memories and felt things. What's
Yep.
the next step? So now it's like, okay, I can see this, how I have had a learning, I have reinforced, I've trained my brain and my nervous system to respond like this. And I want to do the thing that I love again. I want to have a beer. How do I do that?
A good question. So the huge part of this process, a big portion of it, is observing. And the fancy word for that is metacognition. Metacognition, I can't remember if we talked about this last time, but it's basically pretend you're a wildlife documentarian when you're observing yourself, right? Not from this clinical of like, I have to gather every single bit of data about myself or else my life is at stake. That
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't be what a wildlife documentarian would do. David Attenborough would go with curiosity. He would narrate, he would gather data from this place of like pure wondering and awe, right? So we just want to be so curious about our own experience. And it takes time to build the level of nuance to be able to do this, especially for us intellectualizers, because we may assume we already know what all the patterns are, right? Like you just laid out all the patterns for us, which is wonderful. You and I could spend hours together getting at nuances of these learnings, right? Because there's so much, there's what we can see, there's what we can't see but we can access, and there's what we can't see and we don't know it's there.
Right.
And the only way to get to what we can't see and we don't know it's there is time and curiosity. So we'll continue to gather data about these learnings in little ways because it can be so subtle. The ways we shame ourselves can be so subtle. The way we push away our fear can be just power through my fear, right? Maybe I'm in Paris and I'm thinking, my friend really wanted to try this very famous chocolate mousse. Well, historically, chocolate has been a big trigger food for me,
Mm-hmm.
histamine. And, so like I might notice, boy, my friend really wants to get this chocolate. Is it going to make me sick and ruin the trip? And I did. I had this experience.
A lot of pressure there.
A lot of pressure, right? So it's like, oh, okay, so here I can feel this learning of like wanting things to be okay for other people. And that can create a lot of bracing in my body. But here I can also feel this experience of like needing to be hypervigilant of what could go wrong. And
Mm-hmm.
then I have another observe myself all the time of observing these patterns and getting frustrated at myself.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Why do you need to make things okay for other people? You know you don't need to do that. Why are you so worried about this? You'll be fine. And you know if you don't feel good, it will pass. Great. So there's another one of my learnings, which is like anytime I notice something kind of tender or scary, I should shut myself down through criticism and bracing because it's not safe to be with those feelings. Right. So then there's another layer of like, okay, so I can just pause for a moment and say, I must be really activated if I'm criticizing myself. That's a clue for me. It's a clue for all of us. Shame is a lid on a pot. If shame comes in, it means the emotions that are boiling are too big. And you're
Okay.
saying, I have to put a lid on this. So that's a clue for me to say, oh my gosh, I must really be feeling quite a bit of activation about this possibility of quote unquote getting sick and ruining the trip. By the way, this can all happen in about 3 minutes inside of my head because I've been doing this for a long time. It
Mm-hmm.
might take you longer to notice these clues and cues, but then I can just pause in this moment and say, yeah, it makes sense that I would feel a lot of activation around this. I have a lot of grief around things I've missed out on over the last 5 years because of my illness, because of my symptoms, whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of anger about this experience and all the different practitioners who I feel like put all these things on me, that I had to do that have kind of built up the trauma in my head that I'm making myself sick through what I'm eating.
Hold on, let me pause right there, Trisha.
Uh-huh.
All the things that people put on you to do, is that like avoid foods, or is that like nervous system exercises, or I've heard you
All of it.
talk about this vault of trauma that doesn't really exist. Like what flavor is that?
Yeah, kind of all of it. And this isn't me blaming anyone. I've worked with so many wonderful practitioners, but I think so much of the wellness industry, including therapy, is focused on this idea that, like, if you don't feel good, you need to do more. It's because you're not doing enough. You're not dedicated. I remember one program I did, and they're like, oh, it's just a simple, like, 3 hours of exercises every day. Like, you should be able to fit it in at, like, when you wake up, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And it's like,
Oh, you got to
hmm.
do a full-time job. That sounds like 20 hours a week.
I was gonna say a simple 3 hours. And they're like, here's the short version. It's 45 minutes. And it's like, you understand for people who are fatigued and ill that like even doing 3 minutes of something would be very taxing on the system, but it creates this idea, and I see these practitioners who are like, here's this person I worked with and look at this amazing thing they're doing because they followed the protocol and they visualized every single day. And it's like, wonderful. So happy for that person, right? But it creates more hypervigilance within us. Me, I had a lot of learnings around being good to be loved. So I am part and parcel victim to these things where I think, oh, you're telling me all I have to do is be perfect and then I can
Oh,
be well?
easy.
Say less,
Yeah,
right? Like,
easy. I got that.
I'm no problem. I am an expert at that. But what did that do? It created more hypervigilance in my system.
Hmm.
And it created more anger at myself for messing it up, more potential
Reinforces
for
a threat.
reinforces the threat, made me very hypervigilant, like incredibly hypervigilant to any symptom, and then hypervigilant to stop when I got hypervigilant, because that was part of the program, right? You have to stop when the hypervigilance
Get out
comes
of my
up.
head, Trisha. Are we the same person right now?
Intellectualizers connect, right? Like we get it. And guess what? Did the programs and foods and things sometimes bring me relief? Yeah, but did I ever get to live in my life, rest, be present, connect? No, I can remember so many birthday parties and events I went to where I was too scared to eat the food. And you know what else? I can remember another time, my wedding, when I said, I'm going to eat this flourless chocolate cake. Not flourless because of gluten, but flourless because it was amazingly rich.
Yeah.
And I am going to enjoy my wedding. And I had zero symptoms. And that was actually like a really interesting moment for me because I was like, there's some data here for me.
Yeah.
What, again, as I said, chocolate was a huge trigger for me. It's high in histamine. And this was a dark, dark chocolate. I wonder what it's like for me when I let myself be present, enjoy, feel my feelings, and not worry about it on 2 hours of sleep, right? And it's like, oh, actually, I'm okay.
And you
So when
weren't
we come back
perfect.
imperfect, right? Because no one is ever perfect. So when we come back to that Parisian moment, it's like, oh, right. I see all these layers of like the perfectionist, the intellectualizer, the hypervigilant overfunctioner, all of whom are trying to keep me safe in this moment. And I could just have this split second of, now listen, I've been doing this for a long time, so I could have a little compassion. But you, if you're new to this work, might just notice it and say, whoa, with all of those different learnings getting set off in my brain, does it make sense that I would feel really anxious, unsure, and
Oh,
frustrated
yeah.
right now? Right? That's right. And so then you just notice that and you get to say, oh, yeah, none of this is actually happening, by the way. This is all in my head. I haven't eaten the chocolate yet. None of
Mhm.
this is happening.
Oh,
And I've already,
I'm right here with you, girlfriend.
right?
You're
We should
speaking you're
rile
speaking
ourselves.
from me. The vacation effect. I've definitely experienced that, and that's like great data that we can eventually kind of anchor back to
And
as a
that is
new
a transformation.
learning to kind of help update
Yes.
the system. And is that the rep? Is to I know everything that you're saying. I would do that in my head as well, and I would get to this point where I go, yeah, and I want this, and even if it makes me feel like shit, then I'm going to meet that later. And I'm going to teach myself I'm okay. Or is that going back into the, I can't read what I wrote down, the corrective stuff?
That's right. Yeah, the answer is like it depends, of course, because sometimes the new learnings start so tiny. So exposure jumps to the new learning being like you look at it, you watch it, you practice it, you do it. This is more like, okay, what if the very first learning is just being able to observe what's happening rather than be hyper vigilant about what's coming?
Mm-hmm.
What if the
Okay.
first new learning that allows the transformational changes to observe ourselves with curiosity, with wondering, without pressure, like a wildlife documentarian who's watching silly old me in Paris, right? Getting ready to go into this chocolate mousse shop, and the wildlife observer is watching and saying, there she goes with the, oh, we watch her protective strategies arise, and there's the perfectionist part of her. But what does that offer? It's silly, right? Like I make it silly because for me it lets me be a little absurd, but it's someone noticing me. What's happening is I'm noticing me instead of managing me, instead of criticizing me, instead
Okay.
of pressuring me.
I like
So
that.
I know that sounds silly, strange.
Okay. Now I can hear you again.
You can hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay,
So
I don't know
you
what
were
happened.
talking about noticing instead of managing.
That's right. Right. So I know it sounds silly, but that's where we actually start with these new learnings. It's like a titration process. Can you hear me okay now?
I can hear you now.
Okay, just want to make sure.
I'll give you like a thumbs or a thumbs down.
Okay, perfect. So I have this kind of five-step process I've designed, and the fifth step is having new experiences. But this is what's so funny. Every single time I teach this or work with someone, they're like, yeah, whatever. So tell me about how I get to the new experiences.
Oh,
And so then I'm like, okay, so I teach them about the new experiences and then they come back in and they're like, well, I tried to do a new experience and it didn't go that well. I just felt super anxious. And it's like, well, what was the new experience? And it was like exposure. They're like, well, I really need to get better about setting boundaries and I've been curious about it and I know why it's hard for me to set boundaries. So I went to a friend and I tried to set a boundary, but I got terrified. And it's like, cool, great. So that's counteractive. We have
that's
to
going right
work.
into the old fixing pattern. It's saying, give me the solution. Don't give me the nuance and the education, the capacity building, the awareness of myself, and the
Yeah.
observation. It sounds like I'm going to go straight into fix it. And I'm just reinforcing my pattern.
Which is so valid because when you're suffering, you want to get out of it. And we all have that part of us that's like, I'm ready to get out of this. I'm ready to get out of this. Can you observe that part of you? That part has a lesson to teach you. How do you relate to that part of you? How do you observe that part of you? What do you think would happen if that part of you could never be activated again? There's lessons to learn here. And the lessons are not going out into the world and doing something new right away. It's about being curious about all these little pieces and parts, right? So did I get the chocolate mousse? I got the chocolate mousse. I've been doing this work for a long time, so like I can do this pretty quickly and seamlessly at this point. But because I've already done all this work about how I relate to myself in the learnings, now I have access to the part of me that's like, I'll have a few bites of it, and then I'll see if I want to keep going, if it's even good. I don't even know if I was going to like it. And guess what? If there's a possibility that it might make my stomach upset or this might happen, I know in my big adult body, I can handle whatever comes,
Mm-hmm.
right? But people want to jump to that point of being like telling myself I can handle whatever comes when they haven't embodied it. They have all of these old parts of them that don't believe that. So until you work with those parts of you and those parts trust you, however you like to envision that, then the learning cannot be reconsolidated. To be clear, what really allows the transformation to happen? Old learning, new learning, activated at the same time. It's called a juxtaposition experience.
Okay.
So we need the old learning and the new learning to be activated at the same time. And then the brain is like, oh, this actually contradicts this. I think I can take this new data and add it to my data model.
Mm-hmm.
So it takes that data, it adds it into the averaging that it's doing, and it updates the prediction, right? But the thing is, for the brain to be able to take that new learning in, it has to be very specific to the old learning, and it has to be small enough.
Yeah.
Right. So again, if you think about this Vietnam veteran, because or any kind of veteran, they often have this challenge around July 4th, right? And we're going to work through all of these feelings that didn't get processed, how they relate to themselves, what pressure they put on themselves now, who do they feel like they're letting down? We're not going to jump them into saying, let's go to like a gun range and listen to some guns going off, right? Like, we don't need to do that because then we know as we work through these learnings, little tiny bits at a time, talk about titration, and the old feelings update. We no longer have to shame ourselves. We let ourselves feel some of the anger. We let ourselves feel some of the grief. We relate to ourselves differently. We know we can ask for what we need, all of these things. Then suddenly we have more access in the present to actually work with what's happening, which is the fireworks. It sounds silly, but the fireworks is like the last thing we would work with.
And so so what are the four steps then that add up to the exposure?
Yeah. So so that add up to the new experience, right? Not necessarily the exposure.
So
The first,
like person I think of veteran that has issues with fireworks, maybe they think about the July 4th is coming up and they notice that it's just they're like, oh, and they're frustrated with that part that's having a reaction
yes.
to what seems like something that's a celebration. And so, can I meet the anger and the grief of not feeling like I can enjoy myself on a holiday?
Sure, that's a great place to start. So what is step one? Step one is looking at where we want to go. What do we want for ourselves?
Okay.
And if we're not sure what we want for ourselves, then we can start to look at what we want to go away. It's a little bit of I prefer to start with what we want for ourselves, but sometimes it's hard for people to start there.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so if we said this is what we want to go away, so then step two is we want to identify what the old routes are in our brain. So if
Okay.
I said, I never want to have feelings around food again, I never want to feel anxious around food again, then I might ask you, what would that be like? What do you imagine it would be like if you never felt anxious around food again? How would you feel? What would
I'd
be
be
different?
excited to eat food.
Yeah, you'd be excited. So you'd have more excitement around food. How else might you feel in your life if you didn't have to be anxious about food?
Well, I wouldn't have to overthink about it. I wouldn't have to ruminate
You
about it.
would.
I could just be in
Yes.
my life.
You could be in your life, and how would you feel if you were like more in your life in that way?
More in the moment, more in flow, not in my head.
Oh, okay. Yeah, more in flow. So like more presence, more in flow,
I would
maybe
I
more.
would be more focused on enjoying time with the company that I'm with.
Right, right. So more enjoyment too.
Connecting.
More connecting. Okay. All right. So we start to look at this is the thing. People always want outcomes. I don't want to have any symptoms. It's like, cool. Don't look at the outcome. Look at how you would feel.
Hmm.
Okay, so you would be more present, you would be more enjoying, you would have more maybe pleasure, more connection. That's what we're more interested in rather than trying to manage the outcome or the symptom. That's a counteractive approach. We want a transformational approach. So
Hold
if
on,
we
let me
know,
let me slow that down real quick because I think that was a good piece. And
sure,
so in the past, it would be if I identify the old routes, which would be I'm going to avoid or be perfect or I'm going to figure this out and be in my head. If I can
mhm,
just identify those and then go, okay, what would I if I wasn't doing these old routes, then what would I experience? And it'd be connection, laughter with my friends, like
yeah,
joy, pleasure. And so I'm identifying, I'm moving out of the managing cycle or response, and I'm going into what fun things would I experience if I wasn't doing that?
that's right. Because we're
Okay.
always very focused on symptoms and problems. We're always trying to get to outcomes. Humans are very, very bad at predicting what outcomes are actually going to give them what they want. We're horrible at it. We're just convinced, like, if I never felt anxious again, then I would be okay. And it's like, what do you mean by you would be okay? You'd feel more at peace? Okay, so I got a little surprise for you. You can feel more at peace even when you're anxious. Yeah?
Hmm.
Right? So we want to move toward feeling more of what we want, less worried about behavioral outcomes. Okay, so I want to feel more connection, more laughter, more enjoyment. Great. So then what we're going to do in step two is we're going to look at the old learning. So we start, I know we were talking about the learning, so we might sit and think like, I'm just going to imagine, you can imagine this with me, that you woke up tomorrow and you never ever ever could feel anxious about food again. It's like the gene was turned off. Wasn't even possible. And all you could feel was this enjoyment, lightness, laughter. And we would hang out there for a little bit because we know our intellectual brain is going to want to respond first and say, that would be amazing. That's exactly what I want.
And
Okay,
that feels
cool.
really good. I already feel like,
Feels
oh, good.
really good.
Like,
So that's good information because it lets us know we're on the right track. And then we hang with it for another moment and we kind of wait and see if our implicit brain has anything to add. And often it does.
oh yeah. So if I let go, then like I'll have gut symptoms or I'll
Yes.
whatever.
If I
So
let go,
it's like that
something
this
bad will happen.
I'm in this good feeling of possibility without the managing, and as soon as that comes on, this other part says like we cannot let go. We have to control.
That's right. If I let go and I'm not controlling, something bad will happen. Now we have a little idea of what the old learning is we're actually targeting. If I let go and I'm not in control, something bad will happen.
Yep.
And so then we'll just kind of start to practice observing and being curious what roadblocks your brain specifically uses to push you back toward a feeling of control. One roadblock the brain might use to push us back towards safety, which means feeling in control, would be symptoms.
Oh. Oh.
Yeah.
And I just got heat in my body as I felt that.
Yeah,
I'm like,
right?
ooh. So the symptom is to push us back. It's like, hey, you get back in that old
You
pattern.
nailed it.
We
That's
know these
exactly
deep
what it is.
grooves. We don't know this Amazon jungle that you're asking me to go into because we haven't
Yep, it says danger, 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 turn back. And it's like this idiot doesn't know he's going down an unsafe path. That's your brain talking, right? It's because your brain is like only saying, I want to keep them safe, and he doesn't know he's doing something unsafe.
I got a good
What?
one for you. I got a good one
Yeah,
for you.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
remember being on a flight, reading about the sensitization and how accept and allow symptoms and float through them. We're on the way. We're on the way to Hawaii, and I am fasting. I am doing, taking methylene blue. I'm taking ketones. I'm grounding when I get a chance so that I don't mess up my circadian rhythm and my sleep's
Yeah, of
perfect.
course.
And I read this book and I am just like crying like crazy because I can see the pattern. I'm like, oh my God. And so I
Yeah.
land in California and I go, fuck it, we're gonna have some beers and we're gonna have a good time, and we'll be in Hawaii next. So I'm doing really good with that, and the next day I wake up, I had a bunch of energy, but maybe it's a couple days later. I was so surprised at the big energy because I did the thing that I wanted to do, and then started getting gut symptoms. And what my mind goes into when I get home, I'm going to be perfect. I'm going to go on to a low
Yeah.
FODMAP diet. I'm going to do the
Yep.
um, what's it called? The autoimmune paleo. I'm going to fast for 3 days and I'm going to fix it. And so now the symptom has now got my attention and got me to go back into perfection.
You got it 100%. That's what the brain does. That because remember the old learning says, if I'm not in control, then something bad will happen. So it's like you let yourself not be in control. You let yourself
Mm-hmm.
enjoy, be present, have fun, all the things you wanted, by the way. And your brain said, oh my gosh, this is so sad. He doesn't know that he's taking himself down this really out of control pathway and opening himself up to danger. We better let him know that he needs to get back on the safe pathway. And we can do that through symptoms. We can do that through self-criticism. We can do that through
Oh,
intellectualizing,
oh,
all of those things. Yeah. So it's important to map our roadblocks because roadblocks are cues and clues that an old learning has gotten kicked off. And roadblocks can be thoughts, story, emotions, body sensations, and behaviors. But we have to really practice mapping the roadblocks because they can be really subtle. Who could think that like thinking about doing a healthy diet would be a roadblock? It is. It's a roadblock when it's used in that way, in that specific way of like, I let myself let down, be present, enjoy, and have fun. And my brain said, but if I'm not in control, something dangerous will happen. So let's get him feeling symptoms so that he goes to fix it. And then we will be back in the safe zone.
yes. And then as soon as I get home and I do my little protocol, it's like, oh, I'm good and I'm back in the safe. And then
I'm
you
good.
start to go, that was bad. Doing what I want to do and
Bad.
being me is bad. This pattern, safe, good.
You got it. So that's what the brain does. So this is the thing that makes it really hard is like we're seeing through lenses and we don't even know that we have the lenses on. So it
Yes.
becomes self-fulfilling where you say, "Oh, I felt those symptoms and that was because I was bad. Why is my brain making me say I'm bad right now?" That's what we want to observe. And it's like, "Oh, because if I think the symptoms weren't because I was bad, but they could have just been random or they could have been from this pattern, then that means I would let myself be good and have enjoyment and connection and just have fun, and that would be dangerous." So, do you see how every single thing is about the brain roadblocking you to get you back onto the safe pathway? We don't know that we're wearing the lenses with the prescription from when we were 8 years old or whatever it is, right? We have no idea we're wearing them. That's why we have to practice metacognition, observing and tracking, because it's what lets us see what's happening rather than to just be in it. And this is like can be so subtle. Like you do somatic work, so maybe you've noticed this, I might invite someone like, would you want to be curious about trying this thing with me? It's kind of silly. I always say that, it's kind of silly, but we know that maybe it might allow us to try on a little bit of safety together. And someone might say to me, I'll explain to them the exercise, and they might say, that's really stupid. I don't and that's fine. I don't think that's going to help me. And I'm like, wonderful. I love that you notice that. It's so much more valuable than us even doing the somatic exercise. What do you think? Is that common? Do you make things stupid a lot?
Mm.
Does your brain make it out to seem like nothing could possibly help you because it's not sophisticated enough?
Oh
It's
yeah,
not.
I feel like I'm used to. I'm a needle in a haystack. Like I gotta have the perfect therapist,
Yeah,
the perfect whatever, the perfect exercise, and I gotta do it all the time, and it ain't never gonna
that's
work for
right.
me.
Right? So instead of worrying about, but you didn't do the somatic exercise I needed you to do to build safety, what I would say to that person is, wonderful. Now we can see your pattern emerging. We see a roadblock. You have a roadblock to make things stupid. Yeah, it would be really scary to try on something new, right? Or, oh, do you just suddenly magically get really busy or have to take on a new project at work or have to reorganize your closet anytime you might have a little space to slow down and be curious? Huh, huh. That's kind of interesting. Huh. Yeah, I
Yeah,
wonder about that, right?
yeah. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
helping me connect all these dots. This is great. This is why I do a podcast, so I can get free therapy on that.
Yeah, of course, right? Like I love talking about it because it helps me observe my own process too. But like those steps could be the bulk of the work for a long time before we ever get to trying to have a disconfirming experience. Because what we're doing alongside of all of those is step four, which is building safety. We're building safety to observe ourselves in a new way. And it's not what you think. It's not that you have to go and do all of these exercises to feel safe. It's slowing things down. It's practicing this neutral wildlife observer stance to notice when your brain tells you you're unsafe, right? So you would be like, people will say the wildest things to me. Like they'll say, well, I didn't do any of my routine. I didn't do any of my routine this week. I self-sabotaged the whole time. And I just came home and sat on my couch and scrolled on my phone because I'm such an idiot. And I'm like, oh, okay. So you had a really stressful week and you came home and did something that kind of felt relaxing, maybe slightly zoning out.
That's what I
And then you
did.
criticize, yeah, and then you criticized yourself for it. And they're like, I didn't criticize myself for it. I'm like, sorry, calling someone an idiot seems a little critical. And they're like, oh, that's not critical. That's just a fact. I'm like, no.
This
Right? Like,
this is what
so,
I call using information to load the gun and point it on ourselves. Because if I
well,
can
that's
make
right.
myself the problem, I can understand all the things that could go wrong and I can identify that, then I can make myself the problem.
Of course, and that gives us a sense of control, right? Like we learn to collude essentially with the learnings. We partner with them and say, "Oh, brain, I'll do it for you," right? Like I'll
Mm-hmm.
make myself the problem. I'll pile on myself. I'll shut myself down. It gives me a sense of control. That makes me feel safe. Then I don't have to feel any of these scary things that are happening. And sometimes it means if we're the problem, we don't have to accept feeling the feelings about the people around us who are actually hurting us or the world that is
That's
hurting
what I
us
was
in some
thinking.
way,
You're
right?
preventing getting that from the environment. If I can
Right.
do it to myself, then I don't have to feel that overwhelm from other people.
So most of us learned that as children, right? Where like even if we had parents who loved us and met our needs and whatever, we still had attachment ruptures. All of us did, attachment failures, these kind of disruptions. And that feels life-threatening to a child. Children don't have cognitive complexity to say, oh, my parent criticizing me and punishing me isn't about me, it's about their patterns. Children can't do that. They
Yeah.
say, wow, this person who I love and who I rely on to keep me safe keeps on hurting me. They keep on not seeing me. They keep sending me away with these emotions. And I'm a kid. I don't know what to do with these emotions. Holy moly, this makes me really angry and really sad, but that's not safe to feel either. I'm really scared. Oh, I know what it is. I'm the problem. I just need to try harder, be better, be quieter. And then it's like, oh, that's numbing. Oh, that suddenly gives me a faux sense of safety in this moment, but it's the only safety I have access to.
Hmm.
Right. Right. So we come by this very honestly. Can you develop these patterns in adult life? Of course, yeah, but oftentimes the roots are down to the younger states.
Wow. And it feels like you're just so, it feels like you've got a lot of reasons to stay in this pattern.
You do
A
have a
lot of
lot of,
reinforcements that are unconscious that take, I'm glad you're saying time and titration because we can't just jump in the deep end of the pool and experience and see all that at one time. But like
no.
even in this exercise, I'm like, oh, boom, 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 boom. I've added a couple new awarenesses, and it's so perfect because I'm about to go on vacation to the beach, and so now I get
You get to
watch,
experiment.
yeah, experiment
Yeah.
and watch some of this stuff instead. And I like kind of pausing and being with it and doing a little bit and seeing how I feel and seeing what arises from that and it's and then instead of just jumping into the deep end and white knuckling it and hoping for the best which
That's right.
ultimately it sounds like what you're saying is you can do that, but that is not a way to get long term change because you kind of
Sure.
used the cheat code and went to step number five. And I'm
Yeah.
assuming step number five is
Have new
exposure,
experiences.
have new experiences. So
Yeah, but
you
it's
once
not what
you
we
build
think.
the safety to observe and you're slowing down and you can watch, then the next step would be do the thing that you're wanting to do and watch more stuff come up. Is that right?
Sort of, yeah, yeah. And the next step would be to be curious about experimenting with potential new experiences. And you're going to make it so small that you're going to be annoyed. I promise you will be annoyed. If you're not annoyed, it's not small enough. Okay. If some part of you is not saying this is a pointless new experience, then it's not small enough. because
Okay.
it really has to be very small for the brain to be able to take it in. Just like you said, the learnings are all tangled down there together like a ball of yarn. It's like you pull on one and another one, they're all tangled up in there. So we're never just working on one learning at a time. So we know many patterns will be coming up. And so when we're trying these new experiences, this is where people will say, yes, I got to step 5. Now I can go do this thing. And it's like, kind of, yeah, but remember the new experiences start within you. How you observe yourself, how you all the skills you built from 1 to 4, safety, observing yourself, slowing down, relating to yourself differently, that will be the bulk of your new experiences rather than going and exposing yourself to something new. Now, eventually you will get to the place where you might want to play around with a behavior, quote unquote. Like, let's say, for example, you're a routine person, right? Like you have to run this whole nervous system routine to make sure that you're okay.
Yeah.
And and we might say, if we were working together and we'd gotten through a bunch of work, we might say, hey, what would it be like to imagine right now? Let's just imagine that we made it so you could never do that nervous system routine again. We just turned off your memory of that nervous system routine. And so you woke up tomorrow and you couldn't even do it if you wanted to. What would you notice in this moment?
I could see in the past it would be terrifying. Now it's
Yeah,
more like, thank God.
right?
Oh, that
Right.
feels so
Okay.
good.
So, and both of those things could be present, right? One part could say, thank God. And then we could wait a moment, and another part still might be a little scared. Another part still might say, but if I can't do this routine and I start having symptoms again, I might lose all the ground that I gained. I might not be okay. I might, and it's like, let's notice that part of you and work with you before we go say, why don't you not do your routine tomorrow? Right? Because what I find the most is as we work with the emotional learnings within us, the behaviors shift naturally.
Meaning, give me an example of that.
Yeah, right. So as you're criticizing yourself less, as you're processing some of these old things, as you're feeling safer and safer and not needing to control to be safe, then you won't naturally feel drawn toward doing controlling behaviors. So
Yeah.
you might naturally just be like, you know what? I got invited to go to this happy hour today. I know I've been wanting more enjoyment, connection, time with my friends. I'm going to go to this happy hour. And your brain's not saying, your routine, your routine, your routine. And maybe it just comes up of like, oh yeah, if I go to that happy hour, I won't have time for my routine. And you're like, that makes sense. And if I come home and I want to do a few things, I can. Or you notice like, oh yeah, I can feel the perfectionist part of me that's like, I don't know if this is safe, but I can show my brain. Imagine it like this. If I could look over the top of my glasses, my brain is saying, if you don't do your routine, you're going to lose all your ground and you won't be okay. And I'm like, I see that in you, brain. I wonder, would you be willing to just like look over the top of the lenses so that I could show you what I see here in 2026? And what I see here is I actually have so much capacity to handle whatever comes.
Mm.
That I know if I skip a day of my routine or I eat a delicious chocolate mousse or whatever it is, here in the present where I am, my life is not at stake.
Hmm. And
Right?
when you do that titrated thing that's driven by something you're interested in, and then you basically go like, oh, that was fun, and I didn't die.
Mhm.
Like maybe I can handle this. Maybe I'm not as fragile as I thought, and maybe the pattern isn't necessary. And it also, I've heard you say like, I think you could go and take these steps and do effort, but it sounds like you don't have to. It's more observing and
Yes.
titrating and
Don't have to effort so hard. Exactly. Because when we do that and we can just observe, let's say you went to the happy hour, you had an amazing time, but you had still that little voice in the back of your head. What about the routine? And then you get home and you're like, oh my gosh, I had beer, I had nachos, and that little voice comes up too. Instead of efforting and saying, oh my God, I better do my routine now, or like, okay, I better get up tomorrow. So that kind of your vacation example, right? Instead, you can just come home and you can kind of notice like, how could I feel anything except this anxiety when I'm doing something new that in the past my brain has said was dangerous? Maybe, possibly, potentially, it wasn't dangerous. I always say that, maybe, possibly, potentially, because I'm just allowing my brain to consider maybe, possibly, potentially, there's a 0.01% chance that I'm actually okay. And then I'll say that to my clients and they'll say, actually, I think it's like a 10% chance. I'm like, 10%? Woof, look at that. 10% chance that you might be okay. Hey, that's huge, right? Because if our brain was making a 99.9% chance that we were going to die as a result of this, and now it's an 89.9%, big improvement in the prediction, right? So we don't have to try to shove it down our throat. As long as we're observing, being curious, noticing, we're feeling the present and the past at the same time, the predictions update, the data
And the
update.
effort, the pressure, the managing can go out the window when we slow down, observe, witness, meet, not just throw yourself into the fire.
That's correct, because throwing yourself into the fire is just another way of overriding yourself. It's just another learning that you have. I just have to pressure myself. When we really get to the root, just like you were noticing, like we found for you, if I'm not controlling myself, then something bad will happen.
Mhm.
That's the learning we want to target. Putting yourself into the fire to say you have to do all these things, another form of control. You're going down the same roadway, you're just pretending that you're not. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when you've been controlling for so long, it feels like there's so many alarms going off. What I've learned is I don't have to go digging for each alarm. Can I meet the moment and let my nervous system be the map? And with this, I would throw myself into it a lot of times. And what this
Mhm.
allows me to do is kind of piece and part it together using the tools that I already know and observe that and kind of take my time turning off the alarm instead of running into it. And I think it's so funny. I'm talking about fixing and figuring it out and forcing, and it's so nuanced and so easy to sneakily go back into that pattern
Yeah.
if we're not zooming out
If we're not observing, that's why, like, observing and noticing is the work. You don't need intervention. That is the work, observing and noticing and being curious. And when you think about, I'm so sensitive to language. I'm very attuned to language because it gives us little clues and cues about the learnings that when I'm speaking for myself, not trying to correct you, when I think about like that I can go turn these alarms off little bits at a time. Instead, I would say, why don't I stop burning things to make smoke? It's like I'm burning things to make smoke so that my brain thinks there's a fire. And it's like, stop burning things to make smoke. Like, stop criticize. Notice that you're criticizing yourself. When you criticize yourself, your brain is like, oh, there's an emergency. I'm going to make more alarms. Like, we are the one making the alarm go off by burning things. We're burning ourselves. Do you know what I mean?
did I go into criticizing myself there?
No, 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 no. But even the idea that like we need to go around turning the alarms off,
Oh,
it
so I
has
have
this,
to be the doer. I have to manage that. Is what you're saying?
yeah, like we want to notice how like the alarms are going off because we keep setting things on fire, mainly ourselves.
Okay. Like, do you have an example of that? I guess.
Yeah, yeah. So if we say like I need to stop criticizing myself, that's the idea that like I need to turn an alarm off. And it's like, no, criticizing yourself is the fire. You
Okay.
are setting yourself on fire when you criticize yourself instead of looking at why, what is happening in this moment that I feel like I need to set myself on fire so that an alarm will go off.
Hmm.
Right? So we want to notice instead of saying, oh, I'm criticizing myself in this moment and I should stop criticizing myself, to say, what feels right about criticizing myself right now?
Ooh.
What am
Okay.
I managing through criticizing myself? What do I think would happen right now if I stopped criticizing myself?
Yeah, that makes a
If I
lot of
could
sense.
never criticize myself again, what does my brain predict would happen? So the only reason I was sensitive to what you were saying is because we don't have to turn the alarms off. We have to look at what is happening that is making it right to set things on fire so that alarms go off.
I love it. Wow. Okay, so you just took that new criticizing thing and went right back up to step one and start going
You
back
got
through.
it. And that's what you will do. That's what you will do over and over and over again. If you ever feel like you have to manage something, I need to stop criticizing myself. I need to stop trying to be perfect. I need to set better boundaries. You're not starting at the root. You have
That
to get to
is
the
good.
root.
This is so helpful for me. Now, where is this model coming from that you've learned? This is your own model? Is this a norm model? Is this something else you've learned?
Yeah, so it's kind of a mashup of a lot of models, a model that I am designing and I'm writing a book about it right now, but it's a mashup of NARM, coherence therapy, memory reconsolidation research, metacognition research, and a lot of research into the unconscious and how we develop these early implicit learnings. Right? So it's a combo of all of these models. If you're interested in this work, I really recommend checking out the book Unlocking the Emotional Brain. It's
Okay.
an academic book. It's super intense. This is why I'm writing a book that is for, let's say, regular people, because it's a super intense academic book. But what they actually talk about in that book is the unifying model of all therapy is memory reconsolidation. So whatever somatic experiencing, NARM, IFS, whatever therapy you've done, if you've experienced transformational change, long-lasting change from it, it's because it utilized these engines of change. So think about it like that, right? You say, well, I like somatic experiencing. And I said, well, I like NARM. It's like you saying, I like Lexus. And I'm like, well, I like Mercedes. It's like, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter your preference for car. Does it have a good engine? Can it drive?
Yeah.
That is memory reconsolidation, metacognition, and some of these interoceptive awareness. These are the engines of change.
Hmm.
Right. So this is how, my book is about micro dosing change. This is the process I've designed to be able to micro dose change using these engines of change to create transformational change rather than getting out there and having to manage yourself. Like the self-help industry would fall to its knees if people understood these mechanisms of change. You do not need the self-help industry. You do not need the perfect intervention. You need to understand what drives change, and then you can use those mechanisms and apply it to anything you want.
Wow. Oh my God. I love this. You have gotten my brain going in a million different directions, and this is super helpful. I'm going to be applying this on vacation. I'm going to go back and
Yeah.
I got 3 pages of notes. You know, you're on a podcast with Trisha. It's been an hour and 15 minutes when you've got 4 pages of notes, and I know the people at home are really digging this, and I'm sure you can. It's easy to see how you can apply these 5 steps to anything that's coming up. And the first key, the thing that I really got circled over here is, am I managing? Okay,
Yep.
cool. Let's go into this. And I can see how a lot of the things that I've done are not to shame it, is that it's transformational. And I can see that. But now I've got a new lens, and I've not transformational,
Counteractive. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
counteractive. And it's like, so yeah, the wellness industry is going to get its ass kicked if people start to understand this. So this is so awesome
That,
that you're sharing it.
that is the
What's the
information I
book
want.
called? When's it coming out?
It's still with my agent right now. So we're finishing up a proposal. I'm like 50,000 words into it. So like, I got a little bit to go, but hopefully in 2027. But like this is the information that I want people to have because I'm sick and tired of all the discourse about like what the right thing to do is. And I've experienced this myself. Like I've been pulled between models. What's the right thing to do? How can I get better? But really, like, this is the information you need. People will say to me, "What about atomic habits?" Listen, if you do this work to get to the root of your experiences and you rewire in this way and you still want to do atomic habits, Godspeed. Do it. Do it in good health.
Yeah.
Use these mechanisms of change and do it. If you want to go do the nervous system program, fine. Again, good journey to you. But stay connected to these pieces and watch out. If you want to do atomic habits as an experiment, great, do it. So what's revealed? What happens when you try habit stacking? Notice, observe, use it as an experiment. What are experiments about? They're making hypotheses and gathering data. You can't fail an experiment. You just gather data. So I love creating like little experiments for my brain to see what other learnings might be revealed, what
Mhm.
places I might be trying to effort. But if you're ready to stop efforting, if you're
Yes.
ready to genuinely create change, be present in your life, orient towards pleasure and joy and connection and laughter, then you have to get to these deeply rooted learnings in your brain and help your brain see what's happening in the present versus what's happening in the past. And the only way to do that is to work with your brain, transformational change, and not against your brain, counteractive change.
Yeah, I don't think our Emma, our mission operative here is to the objective we're looking for through healing is to learn more coping strategies and continuously manage and effort and do. I think the end goal is to let go of that shit and live your life. But how do we make money with that, Trisha? Like I can't charge for go live your life. You know that's but I love it. I mean, I think
I
that's super.
know.
We're really trying. I hear you on the transformational change. I really understand what you're saying there, and this has been mind bending. Thank you so much
Of
for
course.
sharing this. I think people are going to really dig this.
I hope so. Yeah, I just really, you're right. Like I always say like if everybody would apply this, I would be out of a career happily.
Yes, yeah. I mean,
Happily.
this work should be. We make it so damn complicated, and it's like it's interesting that how I feel this way about the wellness industry, like going and getting your labs and taking your supplements and eating the right foods. it's almost like we put that down and go right into these nervous system practices and the perfect routines and the perfect
Yes, we have.
exercises, and then turning it on ourselves when it's not. And it's what the five steps that you laid out help us get under that and get to the root, and put the sword down, quit fighting ourselves so much.
And we'll be curious about why fighting ourselves so much has felt right, right? And then when we're ready and we get to the root of that, we'll put the sword down. That's
Wow.
right, exactly.
Wow. um I think that's a wrap.
Awesome.
Where anything you want to plug? Obviously, we plug the book, but where can people find
Yeah,
you?
of course.
Let us
Yep.
know where that's at.
I'm on TikTok, Instagram. The Trisha Wolfe is my username. I teach a class on these 5 steps to change, usually once a quarter. It's really fun because it's just 2.5 hours of me like laying out this whole process and really going into detail of how to do it. So I've just taught the one for this quarter. The next one will be in the summer, and you can
Okay.
find that
Can you
on my
send me a
social
link for
media.
that I could put in the
Yeah,
description? Because I would love
I'll
to
send
come
you the
check
link.
that out. That sounds like a great 2.5 hours. I mean, gosh, what better way can you spend 2.5 hours of your life? I mean, you
Super
seem
fun.
like someone who has went and enjoys learning, doing the different courses, and it's like it's real easy to get dogmatic and say this is it. I did that
Yeah.
for a long time in the health world. The way I see it now is it's a buffet, man. And if we can enjoy it and have a good time, when we take home these little pieces from each thing and make it our own and share that with other people, and get us off the doing everything everywhere all at once kind of thing.
You got it. Yeah, it's one place where I feel that my like oppositional, I have a little bit of an oppositional part of me. It's one place where I feel like the adult side of that has really served me is I don't feel the need to like buy into any one thing, but rather to just be curious. And I'm always wondering about the root. I'm a researcher at my heart, so I love getting into the research to figure out why things work. So I love getting to share that. It's like so much of my work, I'm just like, I don't even want to sell this. I just want everyone to know it.
I know. I feel the same way. I'd love to just give it away for free. So thank you so much for enlightening us today and coming on the
Yes.
podcast. It's always a pleasure chatting with you. And if the listeners, if you made it this far, congratulations. Thank you for sticking
Yes,
with us.
it's a marathon.
Yeah, absolutely. It always is. And we'll do it again. We'll get Trisha on again and chat with her, and definitely check out her on social. I've always enjoyed learning her stuff. Give us a like, a comment, a follow. We
Yes.
love questions. Trisha will be tagged in the comments below, so you can find her and her links and her upcoming quarterly 5 step process. Trisha, before we log off, any last comments or things people can think about?
What I always tell my clients is you can come back to observing yourself at any time. It doesn't matter if it's been minutes, hours, days, weeks, or months that you've been in your survival strategies. As soon as you notice that you're in them, you're back to observing and you can come back to that process. So don't lose heart if you find yourself going into your survival strategies. They're there for us when we need them, not when we want them, and we can come back to observing at any time.
Amen. Trisha, you're the best. Good to see you.
You too.
Until
Thank you.
until next time.
Until next time.
All right. Bye bye.